and the attorney. Yeah, can you guys come? Huh? The attorney ain't even here. So, they have questions. Okay. Yes, please. All right, we're gonna start. ជម្រាបសួរបងប្អូនគ្នាអរគុណច្រើនបានមកជុំជាមួយខ្ញុំឈ្មោះខ្ញុំឈ្មោះ Vanna and ថ្ងៃនេះខ្ញុំអត់សូវចេះនិយាយខ្មែរទេ I'm gonna try my best come in today we have a community meeting about the issue deportation in the Khmer community. And we lack the support and resources for our people, and so everybody in the community is in chaos. Before we start, we're going to have two people tell the house rules. Edwin and Rodney.
Hello everyone, my name is Rodney.
Hey, Rodney.
How are y'all doing today?
Good.
Great. Now, safety is mandatory. You have the right to feel safe in this place. I've been a volunteer for THAC for approximately 3 events now. I'm from Arizona, transplant here. I've been here a couple of years now. Now I'm passionate about the community. I'd like to see everyone safe and feeling good about where they're at. Now if you have any questions, just feel free to ask me on the side. Okay, now thank you.
How you guys doing today? I'm Edwin. I'm also the security lead of all TAC events and meetings. Respect is priority. As you enter our space for the first time, please come with an open mind. Home. I'm also here excited to be here to give back to my community that I was raised in. You were also raised here, you understand the struggles that we go through. Do not enter our spaces with the thought that your skin color is superior. We contribute equally. We do not tolerate disrespect, prejudice, racism, or ignorant negative behavior. You will be asked to leave if you do not follow the house rules. We will try our best to stay on track of the conversation at all times. Questions will be addressed after the meeting. Everyone will get a chance to speak and have their questions answered. If you don't feel comfortable with speaking, you can write down your questions and we'll get to them at the end. Thank you.
Good job. Well, thank you. Good job.
Thank you, Edwin. If you guys don't mind, could you just move these 2 tables for me, please? Because nobody's going to sit here, everybody's shying away from the front. Okay, so we will have 2 people calling in. One is Tim Warden-Hertz. He's the directing attorney for NIRP, Northwest Immigration Rights Project. And we're going to have Billy Gumabon, president of Asian Pacific Islander Cultural Awareness Group from Stafford Creek, calling in as well. So when they call, we are going to introduce ourselves, us. I'm not going to ask you guys to say your name or anything or sign in. But we'll just go around the room and introduce ourselves to Billy so he can hear who's here at the table. And we will try our best to answer all the questions and concerns that you guys may have. Alberto just arrived. Hey! And so we're gonna go around the table and introduce ourselves. My name is Vanna. I'm the founder of Tacoma Healing Awareness Community, and I know a lot of you guys, and thank you so much for showing up to support and showing how important this issue is into our community, and that we do want to solve problems in the community, but we have to come to the table and talk about these things and work together. We'll start with Kristin.
Oh, I'm Kristin. I'm an attorney in Tacoma, Washington. Usually I'm involved with environment and economy, but actually also immigration rights, because that does affect our community in terms of our welfare as well as economically as well.
My name is Alberto Rodriguez. I'm a staff attorney at the Northwest Immigrant Rights Project here in our office in Tacoma.
Hey, my name is Hugh. I'm working for Korean Women Association, also the Commissioner for Immigrant and Refugee.
My name is Long. I'm also a commissioner on the Immigration and Refugee Affairs.
Hi, I'm Jefferson Mock. I chair the Commission on Immigrant and Refugee Affairs.
Thank you guys for taking the time out of your day to join us. The reason for today's meeting is because at least 5 community members was reaching out to me concerned about what's going to happen to their loved ones because they was detained at the Northwest Detention Center. And I'm not an attorney, so I can't give you guys advice or tell you what to do. So I brought the people that can help come to the table and answer you guys' questions. Whoever have questions, like Mark back there. Yes?
And the person that's been there for so long come back?
In Cambodia?
Yeah.
Yes, maybe, I'm not sure.
There are a certain amount of time?
We're gonna wait for towards the end to ask questions. Like Edwin said,
Too early for me to ask.
yeah, like Edwin said, you gotta write down your questions, brother. If you wanna grab a piece of paper and a pen and write it down, and then towards the end, we'll ask the people at the table these questions, and then they'll address them accordingly. Okay, brother, that's a good question, though.
What
Jabba.
happened if they can't speak in English?
Who?
Why did they come?
Just answer the question.
That's it.
Interpreter.
Okay.
អត់មានបណ្ដាគេបកប្រែមីងខ្ញុំសុំបេតូខ្ញុំអត់សូវចេះបកប្រែខ្មែរទេ Does anybody want to volunteer to translate in Cambodian?
Saying what?
What she said in English.
Vanna, you want to bak prey?
No, I might.
Well, we all can help each other.
Okay.
The word that I understand, I will do
ចា
it.
មីងថាមីងចង់សួរអីពេលចប់រួចចាំមីងមកសួរខ្ញុំណាថាត្រូវការចង់ដឹងស្អីទៀតណាមីងថាអត់ខ្ញុំអត់
So,
So just mine.
ចាខ្ញុំអត់សូវចេះខ្មែរ
forget about it.
So at 4:45, Tim is gonna call in about 10 minutes. He's gonna call in and he's gonna send a message to our community. And at 5 o'clock, Billy Gumabon from Stafford Creek is going to call in. Right now, we are waiting for Peter C. to show up because he can speak a little bit about his journey in the deportation cycle and now what he's doing to advocate as a member who survived the deportation. Well, we have some time to kill before Peter shows up, so I'm going to ask the Immigrant and Refugee Commissioners to introduce themselves and just speak a little bit on this subject and maybe your vision, where we're going with this, and just say what you'd like. So we'll start with the chair, Jefferson Mock.
Sure. So first of all,
Yeah, if you don't mind.
So we can see you clearly.
I didn't prepare any remarks, but I will just give you some information about what we do as a commission. And maybe the first thing I can tell you is that we hold monthly meetings. These are public meetings, so anybody is welcome to attend. And usually they are on the, correct me if I'm wrong, 4th Monday of the month, down at City Hall from 5:30 until about 7:30. So if you ever have a question or want to know more about what we do on the commission, you're welcome to attend. And the next meeting is on Monday. So this is a very timely session for us to understand what is happening to the Khmer community and try to address those concerns. As I understand it, our commission is set up as an advisory body to the city, especially city council, so that we are able to hear from the community and direct some of that input to the city council in the form of recommendations about what city council should do to promote immigrant and refugee affairs. One of the terms that they talk a lot about is cultural vibrancy. So what exactly does that mean for immigrants and refugees to participate in the life of Tacoma, and how can people be fully actualized to be full participants? And that also includes everything from human rights. The deportation and detention center is a big issue for us because it limits people's ability to feel safe. And so when we're talking about cultural vibrancy, if those issues are not addressed, if people don't feel like their human rights are respected, their dignity is not respected, if they don't feel safe, then they're not able to be full participants in the community. So these are some of the different aspects of immigrant and refugee affairs that we're trying to cover. And I think some of the commissioners here can also talk about some of the different activities that we're going to try to start up. This is a relatively new commission. I think it started around February, March is when we held our first sessions. So we are very open to input from the community in terms of the direction we should go in and what activities we should take on in the future.
Question.
Yeah.
You said the next meeting, Monday, is it gonna be here?
No, down in City Hall.
Okay, so.
747 Market.
Do you have any?
I don't know the room number, but it is on the website.
On the website? Okay, thank you.
248.
248.
248.
And you can take down our information too and give us an email or a text or a call.
Okay.
If you're interested, and then we'll let you know.
We're all interested, that's why we're here.
Yeah.
If you go to City Hall about 525 and go to the front desk, they can direct you to the meeting.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, I noticed on social media there's a protest over on the bridge by ICE and stuff. Is it affecting anything? Do you know anything about that?
What protest are you talking about?
On the bridge by ICE.
On the bridge?
Oh, he's talking about when Fight and, when Fight and a couple more organizations nationwide, they did a protest. And,
This last year?
No, it's recently.
Recently? I
Yeah,
think
it was
that's the
last year.
Occupy NWDC group.
yeah, the Northwest Detention Resistance
Is
group
that gonna
led
be
that.
kind of affect the women like that? Or just?
It's not gonna happen. Nothing about this.
Are you talking about how it affects the work that we do, or?
Have anybody noticed anything about that? Like, does anybody know anything about that?
I mean, I think we're aware of those protests. We're not directly involved in them. We don't really have specific relationships with those organizations. I know one of our commissioners has ties to the Northwest Detention Center Resistance. So there are people who are advocating for better treatment of the people in those facilities, but we haven't participated in those kinds of protests. I can tell you that protests like that are both helpful and harmful. Sometimes they do accomplish the objectives of trying to get more attention on ICE or the practices of ICE that are not humane, but they also bring a lot of spotlight and sometimes negative attention.
Well, that's why I want spotlight on ICE.
Right, but let me give you an example. Sometimes there are protests at the detention center right in front, but what happens is that brings more police to the center.
What is meaning? Is it? Can you guys bring out to the ICE and tell them stuff? Because they are affecting our people right now.
Right, so we can try to open those communication channels, but we don't have direct connections to ICE, and we're not representatives of the city. So what we're trying to do is serve as a bridge between the community and the city. Now, ICE is a federal agency, so that's the other thing that's difficult in this case. But that is very much a priority for us.
Oh, that's why I came here. I need to speak to you guys.
Yeah, absolutely. And I encourage you to come to our meeting on Monday if you want.
Yeah, I'll give you my info too. We can talk more about that. Would you like to talk? We did get a tour of the NWDC. We could talk about that a little bit, and then There is a community liaison that works there, and we do have her number. If you want her number, we'll give it to you too. You can call her and complain to her too. That's what she's there for.
So about 3 weeks ago, some of the commissioners, about 6 or 7 of us, were able to get a tour of the detention center.
Okay.
Now, it's a very arranged tour, they prepare for it, so it's not like we have direct contact with the detainees. But we raised significant questions about the health, the treatment, the time that detainees have to spend outside, to exercise, to have access to language resources, legal resources. Mostly it was a general informational tour. I'm not going to say that we got a lot of information that we can point to and say, okay, this is not being done right. But I know that in follow-up we had a lot of questions and they weren't very well addressed.
Yeah, I mean, interrupt you again, but this human rights place, right?
What's that?
Okay, I mean, interrupt you again, but ICE is like, okay, you did tour the ICE, right? After ICE, okay, they send people to Cambodia, okay? Have you guys toured the places in Cambodia yet?
I'm sorry?
Have you guys toured the place in prison or in Cambodia? Like for ICE, where they send people out?
Well, ICE will send them to the detention center.
I know, I'm just saying human rights, right?
Right.
Exactly, over here in Tacoma, okay? Washington State, okay, my friend just got sent to Miami, okay?
Okay.
Yeah, I'm just done. Come on.
Okay, maybe we can talk later.
Yeah, we'll talk at the end.
I think some of the
Okay.
questions you're
Yeah.
asking are legal questions.
They can only help with certain things, and this is a new commission that is trying to improve the quality of our lives in the community. So please cut them some slack. They're
All right.
showing up, and
Sure.
we gotta make sure we have respect when we're asking questions, and it's gonna be okay. Does anybody else? Well, actually, Tim is calling. We're gonna take this call for Tim. Thank you, Jefferson. Hey, Tim, we're ready for you.
Hey there.
If you would just introduce yourself and go ahead.
Sure. So, I'm so sorry I can't be there. This is Tim Warner. I'm the directing attorney for the Tacoma office of the Northwest Human Rights Project. And yeah, now I've been able to be involved in several of these cases, and yeah, I just wanted to make sure to call in and introduce myself and also, yeah, I guess try to answer some questions if that's helpful, and just I guess make sure everyone knew that they is trying to deal both with the sort of very like the emergency right now of having folks taken away to Florida and then you know, hopefully coming back and then really needing to move quickly to see if there's options for folks, but then also trying to work for folks who still do have final orders but who weren't in this recent flight, is trying to make sure folks have the opportunity to talk with a lawyer and get an intake and try to see what options they might have, and then be able to make, you know, the decision that's right for them in terms of what next steps can be.
Thank you, Tim. I know that there's a lot of folks that chose not to check in, and you were saying that it might be a good idea if they would like to set up a private meeting to possibly find out what their options are.
Yeah, I think, you know, obviously it's all really sort of scary what's happening, and so, but I think, you know, meeting with a lawyer is confidential, like none of that information is shared, and that's certainly something that, you know, no matter sort of what stage of, you know, where people are in terms of checking in or not, you know, we're always happy to try to find the time to set up an appointment and run through options with people, and, you know,
Thank you, Tim. And I know that we got some cards, business cards for NERP on the table. And what else is there?
There's a couple more sheets that, and I'll talk a little bit more about
Okay.
those, but just about how to get in touch to talk to an attorney.
Okay. Well, thank you, Tim. I think Alberto will take over for now. And appreciate you so much for always being on standby for the Khmer community.
Yeah, of course. We always are, and I'm really glad that folks got a chance to meet Alberto there, who, you know, is doing some work, also sort of, you know, funded through the Tacoma Defense Fund, right? So that work that I know a lot of folks at the meeting were behind in terms of pushing the city to step up for its residents, you know, that is, you know, now we're being able to see, right, the difference it can make. So yeah, thanks so much for having me call in, and again, my apologies that I couldn't be there in person.
All right, next time, Tim. Thank you.
Thank you, Vanna.
Bye. All right, that was Tim, the directing attorney for NERP, Northwest Immigration Rights Project. We have 5 more minutes before, or actually 10 more minutes before Billy calls in. Hugh, do you want to come up and say some things? I know that you represent the Vietnamese community. I know this is about the Khmer community, but I feel like we should shed some light on the Vietnamese community as well.
Do that too.
Because it's Southeast
Not just
Asian,
us.
right?
You know what I'm saying?
And so we'd like to hear your input.
Well, actually, you already heard that Jefferson, our chair, just mentioned that we just forming, the commissioner just forming. So right now, we're in the process of gathering, connecting with the agency community in order to see how we can support, how we can create the bridge between, you know, the community and the city to protect the people in the community. So like the Vietnamese communities, also, they're also the people in the community been affecting by the new law, the new regulation, and I know that, I understand that. Also myself, I got a few family come to me and looking for help because their family member being, you know, take it, as you're saying, to a different state, and they're gonna ship them back to Vietnam within 2 weeks. Before that, you're talking about like a few months, but now taking it within 2 weeks, they ship back, even though he been, yes.
Is that real? Because I thought it was only Cambodia.
Yes, not
Is
only
Vietnam
people,
doing that?
all the people in the community, not
Yeah,
only
mainly we
Cambodians, yeah. So, at my role, I normally working with, at a Korean Women Association. We also have the Cambodian speaking staff who helping the people daily with their issue in their life. You know, how to access to the benefit from the community, how to resettle down when you come to live in Tacoma. We also helping the people with some, we call it legal services, talking about like green card, talking about citizenship. We try to make sure the people understanding how it's gonna be impact if you are not getting into citizenship and you're still holding your green card. We try to help in that. We hopefully, you know, the people in the community who need help come to us, because right now I do have 3 people speaking in Cambodian working at the office. We have a connect, like you're saying, with the, you just hear Tim, I also know Tim, so we work closely with Tim, so we can connect you. If you have any issue, we can connect you with like experienced attorney in order to help your family. So that's the best we can do. And for my role as commissioner, well, I just totally brand new. We just learning. So we got the, you know, guidance from Jeb, somebody else that help us what to do. So, I mean, you know that I understanding the Cambodian community living around here, and even in this building too. We have many families living around here too. That's the reason why I normally send the staff come down here 1 a month. Before that I sent 1 a week. Now, because not much people need help, I don't know that because it not come to the right time when they really need help. or they wait until they really be impact in the family. But my recommendation is, you need to come, engage in the community, and we have to support the connecting community. So in order for us, we also have the activity weekly, because it's the senior meal side. You know that at the church, Cambodian church over there, we got our staff over there is helping the people transfer the message or information, whatever happened around the community every week. So I hopefully the people in the community, you're not gonna wait until something happened to your family and come to see us. You need to come there, because we gonna provide you information every week. What's going on, what happened, what should you do, how you repair. For example, like you just mentioned about, affecting your family, some people being arrested, even though they been, have some offense back into 20 years ago, right? You're not gonna wait until when we being arrested in the morning. You have to come connect to us. Okay, I know somebody. What should we do now? How we prepare for that? If I am married right now, I have a family, I have a children. What should I do? Right? What is my plan? So I will start in training to understand.
That too, my family though.
Yeah.
That happens to my family.
Yeah, that happens to them. So, for example, if I'm sorry, I have continued this one, like your family. So if you need to be planned ahead of time. If you get somebody else in your family, so if they impact their children, their wife. So what they plan? What happened is one day, go out, that member go out and never come back. What you gonna do with the children, right? So there's some plan you need to do, and how you doing that? We are talking with Immigration 20. They have some we call Immigration 101. They do some type of nerd. I just forget the name of the ED.
Tim?
No, not Tim.
Oh, in Seattle. No, I'm not sure. It might be someone from Seattle, but.
He's from Seattle. Yeah, he used to be in Tacoma, but he normally gonna do quarterly Immigration 101 around the community. So when we get that information, we're gonna get the flyer and distribute out to the community. So hopefully can get that connection. So take a chance, come to Immigration 101. What should you do? How we prepare for the family? Go there and get information and really be sure about that. So hopefully that can be some information that help you to understanding what's going on.
Thank you. It's long,
Any
a
questions?
couple minutes before Billy calls in. You wanna touch on anything in the Khmer community?
I'm here to learn too.
Okay.
Yeah.
Vanna, I have a question. So, if your family is in detained and about to deport it back right now, in this case, who is the one to be able to helping all of us here that we need help?
I think this question is for Alberto. She's saying that her spouse is currently in Miami right now,
Right.
getting ready to get interviewed.
Yeah, one of my clients, someone that I'm representing, is one of the group of Cambodian people who got picked up by ICE and transferred to Florida so they can try to get them a travel document back to Cambodia. I think, so your question is who to reach out for help. I think that's probably going to be NERP, us. If you were living in Tacoma before, or if your family member was living in Tacoma before they got picked up by ICE, like within the city of Tacoma, definitely call us. You can call me even. I have my own business card on that table. You can get a hold of me. If your family member was living in, let's say, Pierce County, but not necessarily Tacoma itself, you can still send me an email, and I'll see who I can get you connected with to get you some help. If you're living somewhere like in King County, then there are some good free legal resources that can help. Probably the Legal Defense Network in King County, and we have all of their contact information and information on how they screen people, because you have to meet under a certain income requirement in order to get help from these people. But we have all the information on how to get a hold of them and then what you need to qualify. But if your family member was living in Tacoma, I wouldn't talk.
Okay, and one more question.
Yeah.
I have spoke to the immigration where they have him turn himself in. They told us the answer that the Khmer government does not accept the deport of Cambodian for this moment. And after the interview in Miami, they will release him if the Khmer government are denied. Is that true?
So that's a possibility. At the end of the day, we don't know, but based on what's happened in the past, that's a really good guess of what might happen, because in the past when they've done this to people and they're not able to get a travel document, so Cambodia doesn't want them back, then there's nothing the government can really do. Usually they might stay detained for a few months and then just are released at the end. But there is a risk that if the Cambodian government were to change their mind, because we don't know what they're thinking either, if they are able to get travel documents for these folks, there's that small risk that they might end up deported, which is why I think it's really important to talk to an attorney, because if there is like an option for maybe, like if they have any options, we need to move pretty quick on them, because we don't know how long it before ICE could maybe deport them. It could be like a few months is probably what we're thinking if it were to happen at all, but I think that's why it's important to get in touch as soon as possible.
Okay.
Your question is back into about like, from my experience, back into about like 5 years ago. I got the Vietnamese members. They've been turned and deported back to Vietnam, but the government not accepting that, so they turned them back. So right now, I know that they still live in Vancouver, but actually, their green card been revoked, so that they just live like no paperwork at all.
But are they released out, or they still in the immigration?
They already assured the jail term, so they will release out like all the people, but they have no document, no paperwork at all.
Okay, but at least they're free.
Yeah.
Okay.
And again, that's a possibility here, but there is a chance that the government of Cambodia might accept people, and because that chance exists, I think it's important to get started. Sorry.
But he bring up the point though, so make sure they don't renew any government document. Like you go to like Cambodia consulate, you renew your passport, apply for a birth certificate, whatever. If they do, yet they can be a risk of they're gonna be not gonna return.
So Billy is calling from Stafford Creek right now, and we're gonna go around the table just to introduce ourselves, say hello, and then he's gonna speak for 10 minutes.
Oh, hi, hello, this is you.
Hey Bill, this is Salon.
Hey Bill, nice to meet you. My name's Alberto.
Hi Bill, I'm Kristin.
All right, you got the floor, 10 minutes.
How you guys doing today? My name is Billy. I serve as the president of the Asian Pacific Agricultural Awareness Group, chapter here at Stafford Creek. We are an organization that promotes the growth and development of API men and women within the confines of the Department of Corrections. And a lot of our work, we focus on cultural awareness, whether it's cultural identity, cultural reputation, transformative justice work, community building. And currently we are working on a prison for liberation framework. And this includes reentry, leadership development, and it's important for us to really build up and prepare the next leaders for tomorrow, right? And we believe that we want to prepare individuals to be contributors to their families and communities. As incarcerated individuals, we were once, a part of the problem in our communities, but now we aim to be a part of the solution. And, I believe finally that the greatest resource that we have in our communities is people. One of the things that we realize now and we understand now is that we have the power and potential as people to impact and to really further our communities and our families that we're actually comfortable to belong to. So, from what I hear, Vanna, she informed me, I didn't obviously get email from her that today, that there's an emergency in our community, pertaining to deportation. And we understand, the seriousness and the urgency of this issue, and it's very much, and we are very much affected by it as well, right? There's a connection. When we talk about deportation, we have situation, right? We have brothers in here who are faced and have folks here who are, really experiencing and impacted by the deportation, the prison to deportation pipeline. And when we do is when we identify the issue and we figure out ways to mobilize around it. And one of our upcoming projects that we have right now, we're planning to hold an immigration deportation summit at this institution in October 16th. And we plan to just raise awareness, to educate people about this issue, and to, really hold a dialogue with our communities and with each other about the solutions and alternatives to this issue. And, the problem that we identify for individuals who are facing deportation in here, we're considered ICE detainers, right? The individuals who are facing deportation, they have an ICE detainer or an ICE hold. So it restricts them from going to like camp. It restricts them from going to work release. It limits their educational access, reentry programs, work access, and it really restricts their ability to really try to better themselves while they're incarcerated. So we're trying to, raise the issue of deportation in all its entirety, and I really would like to extend an invitation to everyone or anyone who is able to come and engage in this dialogue with us. Also, before I open up to any questions and stuff like that, just recently we just posted the flyers of the immigration deportation summit in all the living units, and there's so much controversy surrounding us holding an immigration deportation summit here at the institution. If you look at the history and averaging and just how controversial this topic is, it's so deeply rooted in racism and xenophobia, and individuals and the staff here really have these political views and are against us organizing or against us holding this immigration deportation summit. So this is the current climate right now at the institution of us, holding this immigration deportation summit. Actually, one of the units, I think one of the staff will break down one of our flyers throw it away in the trash.
That's messed up.
But, we just had a meeting yesterday about that whole situation, right? And, our staff sponsor, he was a little discouraged, right? Because his peers are kind of like, as soon as the flyers were posted up, his phone was getting blown up, and messages were on his phone talking about, you can't pursue political views, you can't bring politics into prison, you can't do this, this is not right, and we had this conversation, and just knowing that this is what we're up against is making us want to push even more, and I think it's ever so important for us, as a community, right, and for all our communities, for us to call on our communities to really come through and engage in this conversation and, really hit hard on the message, right? What do we want people to understand about this issue? What do we want people to experience? And what do we want people to take from this summit? And that's what we were just talking about yesterday. So I would like to open the floor to with, any questions or anything pertaining to the summit coming up.
Does anyone have any questions in regards to the summit coming up inside Stafford Creek, or any questions for him?
I just want to know whoever can help us to fight this case that I think that it's not fair. We've been here over 30 years, 40 years, and we have a right, and we shouldn't be detained back to where we come from. And I just want to know who can help us.
Some of us, we came here since like 79, 78, whatever stuff. Is it right that we get sent back because we're refugees, Like,
Yes, we are.
We plan to come here. They brought us here.
Yeah, and I think my personal perspective of this whole situation is we're not fighting back. We're not stepping up appropriately because, you know, we're from the streets. All we do is know how to, you know, fight and bang on each other and stuff. But when it comes to community and policy changes, you gotta be professional, and we're not being professional enough. So this is part of the meeting today. We're gonna discuss ways where we can impact change correctly. Because if you're gonna step up and be hood about it, they're not gonna hear you. You know what they're gonna do? They're gonna call the security guard, say, handle this, take them. Because you're not approaching the situation correctly and professionally, because that's what they want to see. People stepping up to be professional, but we're not. We're still same, doing what we do. But, so no one has questions for him?
Keep his head up and stay strong.
Brother Mark said, keep your head up and stay strong.
Oh yeah, for sure. You know, just to touch on what you were just talking about, like just being professional and being able to speak truth to power first off, right?
Yes.
And I just believe that the first step for us to do something like that is solidarity. You know, and I really believe that that's one thing that's missing in our communities is that, you know, there has to be a connection within our communities and that we support each other and be present within the struggle that we're facing, right? And a part of what we want to do in this October 16th summit is, you know, speak truth to power, be professional, but also humanize the stories and empower the voices of immigrants who are incarcerated. You know, we also want to promote initiative in people, right? We want people to take initiative in creating the changes in the community and to really change their mindset and create positive outcomes in their lives. And really aim to, like, you know, break down these barriers, right? And dismantle this, you know, racist, you know, deportation, you know, for this, you know, climate that we're in right now. And, you know, it starts with our communities. You know, it starts with how we build with each other. It starts with how we work with each other. And really developing that message and so that we can fight back.
Yep. All right, brother, sounds good. I look forward to seeing you on October 16th. Me and Vanna's gonna be there.
13.
It's 16.
All right, cool.
Yeah. October 16th.
He wanted early. That's good.
All right, brother. Thank you so much for calling, and I'll hit you up.
Okay, all right, take care.
Thank you. All right, guys, that was Billy G from Stafford Creek, and one thing that you have to understand is they don't just deport you for no reason. It's usually you're in prison serving a sentence before ICE picks you up at the end of your sentence. Yes, sir.
I don't believe that.
You don't believe it?
Nope.
Why don't you believe it?
We never did one thing.
Okay, that's true too. That's true too. Thank you for clarifying that, brother.
Yep.
Okay, so next we're gonna have Kristin Ang talk about, yeah, she's gonna give a quick history of how deportation came about. And we're still waiting on Peter to show up to share his story.
Well, I just saw the agenda, so now I know what I'm talking about. So in 1996, IRA, Immigration Act, with President Clinton and the Gingrich Congress, they decided they wanted to make harsher penalties for violating immigration law. And in that case, they decided to put time bars. So if you have overstayed on your visa 180 days, you are now banned for 3 years. Like you have to get out to be legal, to be legal documents. And if you've stayed over 365 days or more, it's a 10-year bar. That's where you hear about these 3-year bars, 10-year bars. And also, it made the criteria to deport someone became much easier. Much easier. And now let's go to like 9/11. How did this all reach up to this high point where we are now all aware of what's going on? 9/11, post 9/11, we decide, well, our politicians decided that we will no longer have the the Immigration Naturalization Service, part of the Department of Justice. We will have this Department of Homeland Security, and that's in the creation of ICE. And ICE was formed on March 2003. They were given tons of funding, and they have to do something with that funding. So what do you, when you're trying to make up for what you're gonna do with money, of course you're gonna say like, I am getting all these immigrants. Like you gotta say that that people are getting something for their money. And during the Obama era, actually, people sometimes called him the deporter-in-chief because there was a ton of deportations during that part. From like the Clinton era of like like they would say 90,000, hundreds of thousands. During all this time through 9/11 up to, but then he did these memos that talked about priorities. Who do we really want to focus on? What kind of priorities? So the focus was on those who posed safety to the danger to our community and a national security threat. So there were priorities, and there was also prosecutorial discretion and administratively closing cases that when you see these cases like, oh, that person, let's say an example that I've dealt with is someone who shoplifted 15 years ago. They did it twice. And 15 years later, they decided to apply to become a United States citizen. Well, when they apply, all their records show up. And because they committed those 2 crimes back in the day, suddenly they're eligible for deportation. Like a lot of people say, well, okay, well, she's living a good life now. She's contributing to society. She has a family. So in most cases, let's give her prosecutorial discretion and close this case down. That's a possibility. So thousands were given closure. However, January 2017 happened. A new president came in who said, there are no priorities. Everyone is a priority now. Everyone is a priority, and immigration enforcement has become quite aggressive and unforgiving. It's always been about discretion and how hard you will enforce. And it's become to a point where people are saying, this is unjust. This is very unjust. And now we've seen in these past couple of years, that's why we've talked about a deportation crisis in the Khmer Cambodian community, because they've seen these statistics in which hundreds have been deported suddenly this past couple of years. And why we talk about how unjust it is because the US was involved in a Vietnam War back in the day. And they bombed Laos, they've involved Cambodia, and Vietnam, obviously, and that caused a refugee crisis and a settlement. And as part of our responsibility, because we did cause strife in these countries, we resettled and accepted people here in the United States. However, when we settled them here, we did not give them adequate support to sometimes thrive in our country. And some went into gangs. Some went into different kinds of crimes when they were younger. And so that's why there is this pipeline, as Billy was talking about, from school to prison to deportation. A lot of times you hear about school to prison pipeline, but for a lot of minorities or people from other countries, immigrants, it is a school to prison to deportation pipeline. And I also want to say you should follow the money when it comes to immigration as well as these prison pipelines. Everything really is about the money too. Because as you can see, suddenly ICE was formed in 2003. Our Northwest Detention Center here was built around that similar time. And it came from 500 people it detained to almost 1,600 today at a cost of around, $150 to $250 a night for each of these people, in which they have to pay so much in the commissary, in which they are, for their day's labor, they're either paid $1 for 1 day's labor, or a snack, or teased with getting a piece of chicken. So all these are related. I mean, it costs more to actually imprison people, $75,000 a year, than it is actually to bring them to Harvard. But somebody is making the money in all of these things. So you should see these connections about how much people are making off of detaining people, jailing people, That is why now there's a billions of dollar industry in just detaining, and it's using your tax dollars. At the same time, in our communities, people are being ripped from their families, and that is causing a negative impact socially, culturally, economically, because when you rip someone away from their family, you're ruining a family unit. Sometimes it's usually the breadwinner, and it does no good either way to simply just detain people in a place that has inadequate health care, not good food, and is costing our communities everything. So all this is actually related, whether you're Cambodian or not Cambodian or whatnot. This affects our community here in Tacoma. I just want to verify is that at least about usually 30 are coming from our area. So those are our neighbors. Those are our neighbors that are being in the Northwest Detention Center right now. And oftentimes people don't think that, immigrants actually contribute to our economy billions of dollars. I mean, I don't want to be like elitist and say like the top 42 immigrants that we have contribute 250 billion because some of them are like the founders of Google and whatnot. But even our everyday neighbors contribute to our community's welfare. And they shouldn't be locked up in there and just pretty much left to the abuses of GO. So let's see what else I had to say. There are ways that people are fighting back. As you heard, there are protests. Right now, the Attorney General, Bob Ferguson, is suing the GO group, the one who operates the Northwest Detention Center in Tacoma, that houses, well, I should say detains, almost 1,600 people, and tens of thousands have gone through that facility. That sits on a Superfund site. They have no evacuation for them if there's an emergency on the tie flats. Do you remember when that metal fire was there? Most people stayed indoors. I don't know what happened to them. They've been on hunger strike now for 5 weeks. So a lot is actually happening here, and there's a lot of focus. The Attorney General has sued for that $1 a day for wage theft. And other places like in Colorado that has a similar facility run by the same people, the GO group, a complaint has been filed to the Department of Homeland Security, Inspector General's office about the health and treatment of people, because there's also someone who's been talking to City Council and everywhere else about her husband who's very ill at the Northwest Detention Center, who's not getting adequate health care, who's getting sick. They have really bad clothes, it's dirty. So it's something that I think we should keep on focusing on the treatment at the Northwest Detention Center, and there are various ways to fight. Some people say you could do it through advocacy with your congressman because immigration law is federal, so you can advocate through Congress about immigration reform, as also reform with ICE. Some say abolish ICE, some say reform ICE. Whatever it is, we need to start looking. Definitely start taking a look and advocating with our congressmen and senators and congresswomen. Yeah. And the other way is to also support our city, because the GEO group is suing the city of Tacoma. Because they're saying, hey, why did you put these regulations on us, these interim regulations in which you say we can't grow anymore? Actually, they really shouldn't even be there, because that area, the Northwest Detention Center, no resident should be there because it's right by the Superfund site, Tacoma tar pits. But people have actually been imprisoned and detained there for many years. But they shouldn't really be. And Tacoma's saying, the city of Tacoma is saying, like, you can't grow anymore. And they're saying, no, yes, we can. We're a critical facility. And so there's a fight right there, if you want to be involved in that area. There's also a fight with people who profit off of these things, like the GEO group. They are actually suing these dream defenders out in Florida because they're making their jobs and businesses harder. But I think you could obviously use billions of dollars towards other things than just detaining people in these facilities, or children, I should say, because now that's going to be $1 billion industry, is detaining the children that have been separated at the Mexican border. So there's always seems to be money. And have you heard that it's kind of, to me, very obscene that $750 a night for each child, and it does not look like a suite to me. They're covered in gray, those looking metal things, and they're in a cage. It's like, that is not $750 a night money here. And other ways is that cities and states have been trying to put in laws that do help and protect our immigrants to make them feel safer. Or King County did pass an ordinance that talked about what kind of information we will give, what kind of information we'll collect, because they're afraid that if we ask for place of birth for certain things, that's the first thing they're gonna look at, is whether, no matter where you're from, they're really like, well, they could be illegal, they could be undocumented because they were born somewhere else. Or can they use the government in some way, some cooperation between police? Why not? King County has passed an ordinance that said they will not cooperate in some ways and legally. And I know Bob Ferguson has cut out pages of what and what can be done perhaps by cities and states, what is legal. Because right now, even though we don't like what they're doing, the law is being enforced in unjust ways. Like I said, there's a lot of discretion in this place, in immigration law. That's why Obama gave, the DACA with the child on arrival. They were given some relief, and then the next term, the next president says, no, I'll just reverse that memo. I'll just reverse that document. So there is a lot of discretion when it comes to immigration, a lot of discretion on how people will enforce it, whether there's even a lot of discretion on how people are treated inside, jails or detainees, depending on the person's there and how much accountability is given. Right now, there doesn't seem to be any. So people have complained about health and even sexual assault, because there's a lot of power given and not a lot of accountability. But if you want to find out more, there are groups around Tacoma that are taking a look. The Tacoma Migrant Justice, Vanna's Tacoma Healing Group, the Northwest Detention Center, the office, the new commission here. And there's plenty of groups, but like I said, there's a multi-pronged way to actually address these issues. And we're also going to say that you should advocate for them with the politicians. So if you do have if you live in Pierce County, which I assume everyone here, you can download a Pierce Civic app, and it'll tell you all your representatives, their addresses, and how to reach them, and phone number.
Is it true that ICE is highly funded?
ICE is highly funded?
Privately funded.
No, we fund it. Like, we do too, whether we like it or not. We fund it with our taxpayers' dollars. And sometimes they even have tried to divert funds from things that...
I thought it's probably funded by ever since well, of course, yeah.
Well, the richest person usually in the United States is the government.
Yes,
and with our tax dollars. So definitely they're being funded by us. Like GO Group, they're getting rich, billions, from contracts with ICE, with the United States, basically. So this is being funded through taxpayers' dollars. And there are a lot of better uses for this money.
You mentioned earlier when they come on immigrant, prison, and then deportation. I have a question about that, because if they've been to prison and served their time that they had against them, isn't that double indemnity if you're going to sentence them twice? Because the second sentence is lifetime.
Yes, that is true. It is lifetime, and it's unfair. However, that is the law currently. That is the law. If you are eligible for deportation, then you can be deported. And a lot of times people don't know that. That's why when I tell people you should apply for your citizenship, I mean, if you haven't done anything, like always go through a United States lawyer. I've been telling that for the people for the past decade, like, you feel like an American citizen. I've been here many years. A lot of these people that are being deported has never even been to Cambodia. They were born in a refugee settlement, or they were born. So in some cases, this is the only country people know. But because they did commit a crime in their youth or whatnot, it was not pardoned or what, they are eligible to be deported. And it seems unfair and unjust, but that is currently the law. And it does seem like double jeopardy. That's why I said for these communities, for immigrant communities, that's the pipeline. School to prison to deportation to ICE.
One other question. Once they've served the sentence in jail and they come out,
ICE is ready for them.
Okay, yeah, but that stops them from becoming a citizen. They can no longer apply for citizenship at that point. So
Well,
they're
you would have to go
stuck,
through
they're stuck in this wheel of going in and checking in every, once or twice a year, and never know what year they're gonna jerk them up and take them away.
And also, people are scared to go to private citizenship because they're scared of that stuff.
Yeah,
Yeah,
that's very true,
I
like I
mean,
told you with what
countries,
happened
I have to say.
with
But
that.
you can't
with
apply
some-
for citizenship if they won't let you.
Oh, you can always apply, that doesn't mean you will be
There you go.
accepted, it'll
Yeah,
pass.
you'll get-
That's
you'll
why I
get
said,
deported.
like, with that one case I was telling you, she shoplifted many years ago as a youth, and that came back to haunt her when she applied for citizenship, because nobody thought that back in the day that would affect you. That's why I've always encouraged people who have felt like they're US citizens, that you're not a US citizen. There really is a difference between being a US citizen and being an immigrant. And nowadays, people have really noticed that. And once you go into the court, once you deal with courts, criminal law, the justice system, or say the legal system, you will truly feel the difference. And in a court of law for crime, you are afforded an attorney. That is your constitutional right. It's your Sixth Amendment constitutional right that no matter how much money you have or how little, you can have an attorney represent you. However, in immigration court, that is not the case. You do not have the right to an attorney. You can go grab one. However, that's also a cost barrier for a lot of people. And you have much better chances of staying in the United States with an attorney than you do without. And a lot of people slip through the cracks. And that's why there are these organizations here, like the Northwest Immigration Rights Project, NWIRP for short, that their Tacoma office is definitely bulked up through the years, through this past 5 years, and they're trying to help out in this community, because I also know that the Northwest Detention Center, which a lot of people, not just people from Washington, but people from Idaho, Oregon, Alaska, all go here, and some even from, like, I've heard people from New York and California, because there's an overflow. And when you keep on building these kind of prisons, people like to fill them. There's already a quota, 1,000, about 1,000, they're guaranteed payment for 1,000 by ICE. But they get any more, it's like gravy. They get more from the government, they get paid more. So there's almost like an incentive, I'd say not almost, there is an incentive to keep on getting people.
Got one more quick question, and this is a rumor that I heard, and that's why I'm asking it. Does Cambodia, if it's a Cambodian citizen, or being exported to there, do the Cambodian government receive money to receive these people? Do we actually pay them to take them?
Yes. They're so corrupted over there.
Well, I do know in the past year that, 2017, the U.S. and Cambodia ties seem to be strained. Maybe that's why, like, you have these cases where we're not taking any of them, not taking any of the ones that you deported, and you have these limbo cases. But I don't know the current status of how
So
the relationship
Peter
is
just
now.
arrived and he can answer more questions about the Cambodian government. So any more questions for Kristin? Okay, thank you.
Thank you. There you go.
Before we call Peter up here, we're gonna ask Edwin to come up and share just 5 minutes on what he learned today with what the government has, a new policy that they put in. You coming up? Edwin has been doing some research and he found something that's really interesting, so he just wants to share it and just let everybody know what's going on in the community, because we don't do policy researches or anything. So 5 minutes.
I don't know if you guys are aware of the public charge rule that Trump has now been enforcing, that we've been actually had in law for about 100 years. And what it basically states is that if you're an immigrant and you have received any help from the government, that's food stamps, that's cash benefits, that's long-term health care, that's your Social Security, you are now deportable.
Doesn't matter what year you came?
No, it does not. Not only is it going after illegal immigrants, but it's going after legal immigrants, close family members. So now this is not only opening the door to criminal offenders, but non-criminal offenders. due to asking for help. This is a law that Trump is now enforcing. So we will have more people picked up, detained, and deported. That's all I've learned today.
Good job,
We still have a chance to, well, right now,
That's
it's
good
still,
information though.
Thank you, Edward.
it's still a draft, so there is still time to call your local government, call the state government, call federal government, anyone who can to get a hold of, to get them to stop that, because it's not in effect yet, it's still a draft, and we're certainly, working to pressure them to not make this law, so I definitely encourage everyone, it's not too late yet to reach out and talk to your officials. Yeah.
What's the name again? What's it called?
It's called the public charge rule.
Could you say that one more time?
Public charge rule.
Thank you, we all learned something today, huh? Okay, thank you, Alberto, for encouraging everyone to reach out to the legislators. In our agenda, we have become a Pierce County voter, and we'll touch more on how we can teach each other the right steps to accurately and professionally handle these situations. The superstar has arrived, so please. Come on, Peter, come up here and share your story and let us know who you are.
I don't know about superstar. So, hello everyone, I'm Peter. I'm also part of FIGHT, which stands
Hello, Peter.
Formerly incarcerated group Healing Together. We also work in hand with, on the national level with CFIN. We went to Cambodia as part of a delegation team back in 2016 in trying to revise the MOU between the U.S. and Cambodia. So we were part of the delegation task force in doing so. There was a question earlier about does Cambodia receive money? That's kind of like a gray area. I'm sorry?
What's that guy name?
Pol Pot, Hun Sen?
Oh, whatever his name is.
Yeah, Hun Sen is still the prime minister.
Oh, yeah.
But, however, that was some of the things that we've gone up there. We've also visited some of the kind of like a receiving center called RISC, but now it is known as another entity. But however, folks that have gone to or being sent to Cambodia are actually being picked up by RISC, or those that are running RISC as a facility to help integrate them back into society, getting their ID, teaching them the levels and some of the things that they would need to assimilate back into surrounding areas. So right now, on a national level, we have partnered up with many different organizations here in the U.S. I'm not a lawyer, so don't ask me any lawyer stuff. I'm just going to leave it like that. But I can tell you my experience and some of the things that we have been doing. One of the things that we're doing is we're planning to go to D.C. and with 40,000 Southeast Asia to protest up there and to show support and rally. This is going to take a lot of money, so it's going to take a lot of community support also. But we're trying to do it within the next 5 years, which kind of shows the 40th year anniversary. Besides that, we're asking for a lot of support from the community. Again, whether it be donations, support, showing up, actually hosting this Know Your Rights issues that are happening within the Cambodian community, and also is the Laos communities is affected, correct? And yesterday we just had somebody got picked up in Wisconsin, and they were Hmong. So, and now we're just going crazy trying to figure all this out. But I don't know.
Would you share that journey, the trip that you did to Cambodia? Was it last year?
So the trip, when we met with the different ministries up there, we had drafted a proposal and we submitted it with some of the lawyers that went up there with us. We were told to kind of keep quiet about it, and in order for the process to go through, and for the Cambodian government to actually be working with us and trying to revise that. We're trying to revise that to match Vietnam's, so that folks that were deemed for deportation would no longer be deemed for deportation due to the fact that, you know, some of the clauses that were in the MOUs, you know, that pertains to Vietnam's. Eventually something happened, and you know, the administration said, hey, you know, we'll revoke your visa if you guys don't start taking people back. So anyways, it becomes more of a political issue at this point. And you know, so you know, the U.S. is putting pressure on Cambodia. Cambodia is, you know, kind of taking that back. So I think that in the long run, if we put pressure and keep holding that pressure on both sides, including Cambodia, you know, eventually we'll come back to the table again and actually start this revising movement again.
Beautiful. Does anyone have any questions for Peter?
Yes.
Do they teach Cambodian there?
We are.
I got a brother-in-law that's getting deported there, and he don't have a clue on how
Yeah,
to speak Cambodian.
so when we went up there, we actually started a group called One Love Cambodia. Actually, they started themselves, and we just helped them, you know, become an entity. And so now they have their own call center, drop-in center, where folks can come in and get the different resources that are available at this time. That is something that we're thinking about doing, is, you know, having somebody to actually teach Cambodia, I mean, actually Khmer, and then after that, you know, back and forth, so that way we can kind of like circulate the money into the drop-in center. I'm sorry.
What actually happens when they get sent over there? I mean, from the time they hit ground, what actually, do they just get put out on the street?
No. So it's,
I don't know. That's why I'm asking.
right. I would say no. No, because somebody would actually come sponsor them or come get them, right? And in this case, it'd be Risk or actually One Love Cambodia that would come and, you know, grab them, unless they have family members up there. And, you know, so those are the three choices, or I guess 4 if you get released on your own, but we don't know how long that takes. But if you get sponsored by, you know, Risk or One Love Cambodia, you could actually go down to the center. Risk has beds out there, housing units that, you know, can accommodate that individual and help them get the ID until they can, you know, whether they go into Battambang or, you know, Phnom Penh, wherever they're going, there will be help, you know.
So how do we go about sponsoring that?
Sponsoring the person?
Yeah.
I mean, like,
if we send money over there or something,
yeah,
saying,
I mean,
we
again,
want to sponsor so-and-so.
Right, so again, it comes down to if you have family members that are already down there, that person, well, then the next step would be contacting Risk, and I can connect you with that person, and you would, you know, talk with them, and then that person would, you know, go and get whomever that is that you're talking about. And then from there on, the communication level will continue.
I think Risk's website's still up under Risk.
Yeah, they're still up, yeah, but they're just
So they
known
changed
as,
their name?
yeah, they just changed their name, but it's well known as Risk. Yes.
Might be kind of a stupid question,
It's
but
never a stupid question.
so I have my dad who got deported.
Okay.
And now I have another family member. Would there be any way possible that if he was to get deported out and he didn't have another chance to stay here, would my dad be able to pick him up from when they touch down there, or does he have to have another friend or family member to be able to get him from?
If your father has gotten his ID and stuff, I believe that is a possibility, but I would really contact Risk to help speed that along, because they have a much more pull. And I'm sorry to hear that.
Thank you for showing up on your family member's behalf, because it's a very touchy subject, and it's more frustrating when you got these problems in the community, but who do you reach out to?
Yeah.
Who cares? And I feel your pain. That's why we're having these kind of meetings, so we can come together and talk about these tough issues, because there are people that does care. You just have to find out who they are, and it takes one to know one. I too have family members who are on the deportable list, and at any time they could get picked up. And that was the reason why I started this work, to find out how can I help my family. And you just gotta go out there, you just gotta start asking questions, finding out who is involved in the deportation process. You gotta learn leadership skills, you gotta step out your comfort zone, that's what you gotta do. And all you guys showing up here today, that's what you guys are doing, stepping out of your comfort zone, finding answers, finding solutions. We're not guaranteeing that we can help everybody, but you showing up to find out what can be done in regards to the case is the first step. Any more questions for Peter?
Just FYI, I'm also an impacted person. I've been incarcerated and was facing deportation at one point. But just keep on working that and fighting for it, thanks to all the support that was there. It can be done. It can be done. So, and now is the time. I mean, we have many inspiring cases from Minnesota 8, where there was rally from the community and loved ones were just showing up and supporting and writing their congressmen, just getting out there and vote is really, really, really important. I cannot stress that out enough. Again, this is the first step, but there's a lot more to do, and we as a community has a lot more to do here in Washington State. So, thank you.
Thank you, Peter.
Thanks, Pete.
Hey, Vanna, before we move on, I just want to acknowledge Councilmember Justin Camarada. He's a council member of the city of Tacoma. Thank you for coming, everyone. Thank you.
Hey, Justin. So on the agenda, we have, I'm encouraging people to become a voter. And like what Kristin said, we need to reach out to our politicians, our legislatures. I know that, us Southeast Asians, we don't play that game. We don't know how to vote. We don't know how to register to vote. Because our parents didn't vote. So it don't mean that we can't learn how to vote, and all it takes is like 5 minutes to register, right? And it's really fast. What was that website again?
You could do it online.
There's an app for...
Well, if you want to know who your representative are, there's a Pierce County Civic app, as well as you could just go online and register to vote. You could also go in person, but it's easier online. It's quick.
So inside the pamphlets, there's a Be a Pierce County Voter, and we need to learn how to play this game. This is the only way to create policy changes and stuff. I don't speak English that well, but it doesn't mean that they don't have a translation help line, and they do. No matter what language you speak, they can help you in your language to go through this process, to register to vote. And my next step for us as a community is take us to Olympia and find out who our legislatures are and just share our stories, share our pain. One thing that you barely see is colored people in the White House and in Olympia. So if we show up, they're like, oh, what's going on? Why all these brown people coming up in here? And then we have to share our story. You can't just bottle up your pain and expect someone to know why you're angry, why are you beating up people, why are you doing what you do. We gotta find solutions to our problem. We gotta heal as a community. But first we gotta talk about it. We gotta show up to the meetings and just network, find possible solutions. Before we close, I'm gonna ask Alberto to come up and just share his journey with the deportation process and his work with NERP, and open the floor to the community for questions for Alberto.
thank you everyone again for coming out and especially for having me here as well. Yeah, my name's Alberto. I work with the Northwest Immigrant Rights Project in our office here in Tacoma. A lot of people are familiar with Tim. Tim's my boss. So what we do is we work out of the detention center. We take cases out of people that are detained here. We have a few attorneys in our office who work with people who are not in detention, but the focus of our Tacoma office is to serve people in detention. Because as you've heard, there is no right to counsel in immigration court like there is in criminal court. So what our organization does is we go in 4 days a week to meet with people who don't have lawyers, to orient them on how to even fight a case in detention and to prepare them to be their own attorney as well, because there are about 10 attorneys in our office, including myself. So we don't have capacity to represent everybody. That's why a huge piece of what we do is community education and also empowering people to be their own attorneys and to really give them the tools to fight for themselves too. So I personally also do some work with the City of Tacoma's legal defense grants. So as I mentioned before, one of my clients now was Cambodian who was picked up. He had been checking in as often as ICE had asked him to check in, and he was detained and transferred to Florida this week. So this issue, doesn't just matter for me on a level because I have a client that's in this situation, but I think what's going on in this community is just a symptom of what's going on everywhere in the nation, of the terrible, the horrible political climate and people's views in general about immigration. So I'm interested in talking to the folks for sure who have questions, just legal questions about their case. I know Tim's a good resource, but you're more than welcome to talk to me as well, especially if you or your loved one is living in the city of Tacoma and then got detained. You can reach me preferably through email because I'm at the detention center most of the day, and my business card has my phone number and email. You're welcome to call and leave me a message, but I think it's a little bit easier for me to get back to you through email. There's also some other resources though, like if, let's say you're not from Tacoma, your family member's not from Tacoma, NERP, we do have an office in Seattle, we have offices in Eastern Washington. We have a page also that we printed out that shows you the steps of how to contact one of our other offices. But yeah, I think it's very important for people. I know that the fear of everything that's going on, it's a very good reason to sort of like step back, and a lot of the times people end up living in the dark. But whatever it takes for you, if you have a question or if you want help on a case, whatever it takes for you, whether it's if you don't want to come down to the office or like you want to meet like not in a public space or whatever it is, we're willing to meet with you so that you're comfortable in talking about your case, because I think, like I was saying earlier, it's really important because these things can move so fast. It's really important that if there are options to help someone so that they're not deported, it's the best option to get that going as soon as possible. So yeah, I'm very, very happy to welcome any questions. Yes?
Can you get sent back for like a simple DUI, like 1 or 2?
Yeah, it depends. It depends if you were in the United States but you have no status, so you never came legally.
But if we came as a refugee.
Yeah, if you came in as a refugee, then you probably got a green card. Then in that case, no, DUI or several DUIs generally are not deportable crimes.
Well, I've known people that they have like a few DUIs and they got sent back.
Yeah, it depends. There might be something else because
well, I don't know.
Yeah, it might be case by case. In general, though, even like DUIs, though, that's not something that the government can deport you for. Yeah.
What about seeking asylum?
Yeah, so to seek asylum, you have to be present in the United States when you apply for it, and you can only apply if if you apply within 1 year of arriving to the United States, unless there's some exceptions, like if you had your green card up to the point when you're applying. And there's a lot of really weird exceptions, which is why it's good to chat with a lawyer, I think. But it's also an option for people who, well, actually for many people in this community, it might be tough, because if you've been ordered deported before, but you have not been deported yet, which is the case for a lot of people, especially the Cambodian people in our community that got picked up, because they got ordered deported, but the Cambodian government wouldn't take them back, so they've never technically been deported. In that case, their case in immigration is considered closed, and while you have a closed case, you can't apply for anything, even asylum or anything else. So one thing that we try to do in a situation like if someone's afraid to go back to their country is try to ask the court to reopen the case again, because once the case is open, then you could try several different options that way.
I got a question. One of my friends, he's been like out of prison for like over 18 years already.
Yeah.
He goes check up every year. Okay? Mm-hmm. Now since after 18 years, after you guys live together, his kid almost like pretty much like what 60, 70 years old now. Not just basically send him back. What's up with that? I don't get it.
No, it doesn't make sense. Like who ICE chooses to enforce immigration laws against and the people that it affects, it doesn't make sense, because there are people that this is their home, you know, like they don't know anywhere else. This is where they've been all their lives.
Right.
But to ICE, it doesn't matter to them.
Man,
yeah. Yeah. Question.
What is the situation where you have a misdemeanor or a felony, but you know, like you've been working, you know, citizen, paying your debt to society, you're done with all that, but you're not even on the radar of ICE.
Okay.
I've got a lot of friends that are out, they're doing their thing, raising families, but they have never checked in after they got out of jail. They're on permanent residencies. What are the steps can they take to get their cases expunged to apply for citizenship, and what is the likelihood of them being on ICE's radar if they try to, you know, start that process? Because a lot of them are scared to even show their faces, or because right now ICE is not even aware of them, and they haven't heard of anything. They don't have to check in, but they're living life here.
It's interesting. It'd be interesting to talk to them, because it's like it's a very weird Venn diagram of immigration law where just because you have a crime or something in your past that makes it so that it might be harder to get citizenship, it doesn't mean that's a crime that makes you deportable. It's like they have to fit under that same Venn diagram. So I'd be interested to see, because if it's a crime...
They'll tell you their crimes, you know, they're stealing cars, theft, some of them grand theft auto. Pretty serious felonies, so. But they just never had any interaction with ICE. They never.
Was that in Washington? Too? Was that in Washington? That.
Yeah, they're here.
Okay. Yeah. It depends too on how much time you did, but in general, those offenses aren't enough to be deportable. But it also depends on when you got your residency as well, because after the first 5 years of when you get a green card, it's a little bit easier to get deported.
Well, you know, they've been here since kids.
Yeah. So
and I always encourage them to kind of look at their records, see if they can get it explained or whatnot, so they can start the process. But terrified of being picked up.
Well, it might be possible. I'd have them like talk to someone about it, because it might be possible to apply for citizenship and maybe get that expunged with a criminal lawyer or something, and then not have, because even if ICE wants to deport you, they still have to have like a legal reason to. And if you're a resident, there are less legal reasons they have or they can use to deport you. So it might be an option for them to be able to get their citizenship and not be on ICE and not be in danger of being deported too.
Oh, cool. Thank you.
Yeah, of course.
Kind of to jump on what he was asking. Along with that, getting pardoned also by the government, and he's trying to seek for like a 212H. Is that something that is still on the table with that?
For that, again, it would come down to reopening a case. So like if someone's been deported before and they haven't left the country on that order of deportation yet, the options are really, really slim. or I mean, there aren't that many, I mean. But if their case is reopened, if they have their residency, it might be an option for them to essentially ask for their green card again and then ask for that waiver, the T12H waivers. But that's only again if their case were to be open again. So, which is why I think it's important, and I really encourage people to reach out and talk to an attorney. You know, if you have a family member in that situation, because it can move pretty quickly, that process, and it'd be good to get started sooner rather than later, for sure. Yeah. If you have questions, and maybe like you leave later and you think of a question, feel free to reach out to me. I'm happy to chat with anybody. So yeah, definitely don't feel discouraged to ask a question, or don't be afraid to bother me either.
All right, thank you, Alberto.
No, you're welcome. Thank you for having me.
I know this is a tough situation when you have someone you know that's on the deportable list or is already deported, and inside your heart you're like, you feel like you can do something, but you just don't know what. You just have to start asking questions. You gotta ask someone and just take that next step. But one thing that you must do for sure is take care of yourself, because self-love is everything. And if your family member's already deported or whatever, they don't want to see you going through it. It just makes the situation worse. It's like a ripple effect. We know about the ripple effect, how when one family member gets deported, and what happens to the wife, the spouse, and then the kids. And then all of a sudden the children in the school system is getting affected. Can't go to school because they're emotionally distraught, or you know, the mom can't afford to get food for the kids, you know, whatever the situation might be. But just know that there's somebody out there that does care, and you just have to ask someone for some help or support. And NERP is a free organization where they don't charge, and his card is on the table, and a little bit information about what NERP does. I appreciate everyone for showing up today. Yes, Ms. Cherie?
Are you ending? Could I say
Almost.
something before you end?
Yeah, almost. But yeah, please do. You can even come up here if you want to. This is Cherie.
I'm not shy, so that's fine. First, I wanted to say I'm here because all our communities are affected by white supremacist society here. But I also feel like, as another person of color, as a black woman, we tend to work in silos, people of color, when we should start showing up for each other, because there's power in numbers. I also wanted to say that I also want to learn, Vanna, how can I be an ally? How can I be a good ally for the Khmer community when it's coming to this deportation issue? Because it's crazy. It's getting out of hand. I think we all are on the same page of how unjust this is, and trying to find solutions for that. So I just wanted to throw something out, Vanna. I'm going to connect with you later. But I'm having a listening session October 12th. And it's another group who are looking for people of color to come together to teach them about how to leverage our collective voices and access funds from the government. So they're going to come, they're going to talk to us about that, because there's plenty of government money for various things. We can do the reverse, right? Take their money, support our communities. And there's local people out here wanting to work with each other, but I'm one of those. I didn't know how to reach out to the Khmer community. I don't necessarily know how to reach out to the Mexican community, they're being affected by this too. So I encourage all of us to please, let's stay connected and use our collective voices to make change. Thank you.
Thank you, Cherie. This is what I'm talking about, networking. You gotta show up to the spaces that you usually don't go, and just speak your voice, say you're interested, or just go up to whoever you're curious about, just ask them, say, hey, can I get your email or your contact information, or here's mine. Yeah, we're gonna have Kristin Eng close.
Oh, okay.
So if we don't have any more
That was a
questions,
good call.
we can have side talk after the meeting. But Kristin Eng will close us for the night before the meeting's adjourned.
Sure, I actually thought that Cherie's closing was very good, that we all need to stand united together because we are stronger, and that what happens to one community affects us all, and we need to start using the government to actually build up our communities rather than tear our communities and our families down. So in some ways, we do have to be allies with one another and find out how we can best support and be allies to each other. How can we actually affect immigration reform on the federal level? How can we be good neighbors, good community members, civically involved in our local Tacoma community or Pierce County? What can we do locally to be supportive of each other in these times? And so I'm very happy to see you here all today, and I think we'll succeed together.
Thank you, Kristin. All right, guys, 6:05, meeting adjourned.